Welcome to Wrestle Wolf. I am Damian Gibson, and this is the NXT review for the 15th of July, 2020. The year from hell, literally. How you all going? Hey? I promised myself that I would start upbeat, and because Matt and I were a little miserable at times on the AEW episode this week, and yeah, and then I started like that. I think it's hard not to be like that a little bit at the moment, right? Like, it's a weird roundabout with everything that's going on. Like, 5 weeks ago down here in Australia, we were all getting out of our houses and going to cafes and pubs and stuff, and all mates of mine in the States and England were cooped up in their apartments, and now it's completely the opposite. But what's right, what's wrong? Who knows? Who knows? I know what does help a little bit is watching wrestling. And, as much as there has been a lot of commentary, including from myself, about whether these things should carry on or not, each week when they are happening, I'm really happy that they are. That's spectacular commentary, isn't it? Anyway, NXT. I don't really have any other wrestling stuff to talk about. Usually, I'll sort of talk about some WWE related things before we get into the review of NXT. But they've kind of, they've kind of been on their best behavior, but they just do what they do, right? Jeff Hardy is fighting in a bar fight at at Extreme Rules. There is this Vince to me at the moment, him and Bruce Pritchard, it reminds me of Rodney Dangerfield in Back to School. Like, he's trying really hard. Actually, it's probably a little bit more like when two guys from 22 Jump Street, I think it's 21 Jump Street, when they go back to school and they're trying to be how they were 20 years ago, and everything has completely changed and they just come across as arseholes. And that's whenever I see any of these storylines, because there's I've watched little bits and pieces of Raw and SmackDown, and there's been some okay, there's always some okay stuff, because the amount of talent they have on the roster, they can fall ass backwards into decent stuff from time to time. But that's when I read about this Jeff Hardy story, and it's continuing as well, by the way. Like, they never see the backlash online and go, oh, maybe we should put that away. They double down on it. And, I know what will happen at whatever it's called, the House of Hardcore Blues, or whatever it's called this week, coming up. Either Sheamus will win to keep the story going, but if Jeff Hardy wins, then, all the, WWE hardcore fans will be like, see, you left hard. Like, Jeff won, so what have you got to say now? Like, well, you're completely missing the point of why I think it's awful that someone conquering, and is still like, anyway, he is an alcoholic his whole life. It's not like he just switches off a light and goes, cool, I don't drink anymore, and now all of this stuff doesn't remind him of past mistakes that he's made, and just, anyway. But besides that, they're pretty quiet. There isn't a huge amount to talk about with them, so I thought we could just get into the review. Just before I do, I want to thank everyone who's been watching, I suppose, / listening to the podcast on YouTube. There's quite a few of you doing that. We are still developing content for the channel. We don't want to just, like, I put a little video up during the week just saying hi and stuff. We don't want to just throw content up there because the platform exists and it sucks. And, so we're quite sort of comfortable doing the podcast at the moment. We're developing some ideas for some YouTube shows. We will get it, I'm talking about in the next month or so, like these shows being up and running. But just if you're wondering, we're just putting the podcast up there at the moment. We'll get that content up there soon. You can follow us on all the socials. We are WrestleWolfPod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. WrestleWolfPodcast@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. If you want to write something for the website, which is WrestleWolf.com, you can send something through to us and we'll let you know if it's something usable. Yeah, that's pretty much everything all the housekeeping I need to get out of the way. So the show itself, I felt overall this show was a little flat. Copying a little bit of flack for being negative about NXT each week, but I just find it. We'll go through this as we go through the card, but I'm when you don't have Finn Balor or Adam Cole on the show, as they didn't this week, for some obvious reasons, storytelling wise with Adam Cole, Finn Balor, not 100% sure why when you've got someone like that at your disposal, he's not on every week. But anyway, it feels like the roster's a bit thin at the moment. Karion Kross isn't doing anything for me. He just isn't. I don't feel him as a threat at all. And I'm more interested in Scarlett than I am in him, as a character. She seems 10 times when she comes out and let's get into it. So Keith Lee came out and he had his moment where he presented, essentially was presented as the North American and NXT champion. He did a nice speech where he thanked a whole bunch of people, including us, the fans. And then essentially kind of segued, it felt a little weak to me, into someone who would support him had been Diva Kojic. I knew I was going to have problems with that name. And let's call him Double D. Essentially, he had pushed, Double D had pushed Keith Lee to these heights, and that he wanted to give him an opportunity at both belts. Essentially, Double D came out. They had a sort of back and forth that genuinely felt like it went on forever. I don't know what has happened with Keith. I don't know whether I'm falling out of love with him or he's trying too hard. There just didn't seem to be a huge amount of charisma coming out of him this week. He's been doing a lot, so maybe he's just, I don't know. It's hard without a proper crowd, definitely. But it's something that AEW are dealing with as well, having a half-assed crowd. So, and there's plenty of good performances, and there were better performances on NXT this week as well. He just sort of felt flat, and also the fact that this Double D match he was not going to win either of the belts. Especially when they put both belts on the line. I was like, maybe they'll put the North American belt on the line and he'll take that off him straight away. But it just did not happen. So that was, later on in the night, we'll have that match. Next up, we had essentially the blow-off for Damian Priest and Cameron Grimes. Cameron Grimes tried to catch Damian Priest off guard at the beginning. Priest essentially put Grimes away with a cyclone kick and elevator reckoning off the second rope. And then after that, Priest said he would be keeping a close eye on the match later on in the night, essentially throwing his hat in the ring for having a match with Keith Lee, a championship match with Keith Lee. This felt a bit weird for me because, out of these two, Cameron Grimes is over. Admittedly, I feel like Damian Priest has really sort of shown that he can be a top guy in NXT. I wouldn't have thought just yet, but so Cameron Grimes just kind of got buried. Buried's a harsh word, but got put away, and then Damian Priest was like, "Okay, well, I'm done with you." I I just thought, yeah, Cameron Grimes would get a little bit more out of this, but I suppose he'll move on to something else. Look, for the overall, I'm going to give this an 8, but it's for the overall story that these two have told over the last month and a half, 2 months. I've really enjoyed watching them work together. Cameron Grimes has, for me, has elevated to the next level. He's actually someone that I look forward to watching on NXT. And as I say, without Finn Balor or Adam Cole on the card, there isn't a lot that I'm looking forward to watching. Next up, we had Indy Hartwell, who is a MCW alumni. MCW is a promotion down here in Melbourne that I'm a big fan of. She got her first win against Shotzi Blackheart. Now, there was some interference in this match. They were going back and forth until Robert Stone decided to come out and try and essentially give payback to Shotzi Blackheart while he was distracting the ref. Aliyah swept kicked. Oh no, not swept kick, but she swept Shotzi Blackheart off the top rope, who landed fair and square on the back of her head and back. There was a pretty big bump. And Hartwell took advantage and got the win. And so I'm really happy for Indy to get that win. Interesting that she got to keep her name as well. That's not something that happens that much in WWE, but congratulations, Indy. Well done. It's really cool when you watch someone from the Indies and working their way up to, as much as I hang shit on WWE, and they are the biggest. They're the biggest promotion on earth. So for you to get there and do that is amazing. So I'm really well done. There was a little tweet after this as well that essentially burying Robert Stone, who was just in that segment, where Rhea Ripley had sent out a tweet saying that she was done mucking around with Robert Stone and that she was going to be keeping a very close eye on. A lot of people keeping a close eye on matches in tonight's episode between Io Shirai and Tegan Nox. Next up, we had the championship match. This, I know that there's going to be people who are like, this is a great match. It wasn't. Oh, actually, I'll give Indy Hartwell a 9 because she won and she's Aussie. It was the whole thing was fine, but again, there's kind of a flatness to everything. Clinical is probably the best way to describe it. I'm watching it and going, this is good. This is good, solid, professional wrestling. But nothing made me pop, as you two like to say. So we had the NXT North American Championship. Both of them had scouted each other. That was kind of the story of the match, was that they know each other so well, and the commentators were really pushing that they're such good friends, and this was a big moment for both of them. And look, there probably is, but I'm definitely not invested in Double D, and I'm not that invested in Keith Lee that I was with that. And I feel like, they do this stuff very conveniently, just sort of out of nowhere. It's like, hey, remember how these guys are best friends? Are they? Yeah, kind of. Keith Lee said that they were frenemies, which even that's probably pushing it a little bit. I know they've had a lot of good matches together. That goes without saying, but that doesn't mean you have a relationship because of, Anyway. So yeah, in the end, Lee prevailed, planning Double D with the Big Bang Catastrophe. And then this is when Scarlett came out, looking anything but impressed, and then emptied a bag, and the contents were the hourglass that Keith Lee had smashed earlier. And she basically gave Keith Lee one of those looks of TikTok. And that, I was like, cool. And I was like, all right, cool. No, they're building towards Kross and Keith Lee. I'm down with that. And then later on, Double D was doing an interview where he basically was saying, I don't care how tough Karion Kross is, Keith Lee's on another level at the moment. And then, of course, for some reason, even though he's this evil mastermind, he got really upset about this because he's insane. And came and grabbed. Oh, they squared off for a bit, Double D and Karion Kross. And then there was a bit of a scuffle. Karion Kross slammed Double D onto the concrete outside of the interview area, and then kind of did his like thing that he does and disappeared. I'm really not. I cannot get on board. I'm trying because there are other people whose opinions I really respect who are like, oh my god, Karion Kross, and I'm not feeling it at all. And I thought it might be one of those things where eventually I just go, oh yeah, I get it, but it's just not happening. I don't know. Maybe next week I'll be like, Karion Kross is the greatest wrestler of all time. But at the moment, I'm just not feeling it. Next, we had Timothy Thatcher in a squash match. Yeah. He is another... I actually genuinely dislike him. Like, when Timothy Thatcher comes on the screen, I am bored. I'm bored. I don't buy him as a tough guy. Like, yeah, I get it. It's the, man of 1,000 holds thing, Dean Malenko thing. It just bores me. And him having squash matches and having a little wrestling school, and like his promo was the same thing that he's been doing for 6 weeks, and I don't buy it. I don't go, ooh. There are sort of times where I'm like, oh, maybe I'm on board, but I don't know. It feels false. That's the most detail I can go into, because I don't pay any attention. Just as soon as I see a Timothy Thatcher segment or match, I'm like, ugh. I'll give this a 5 out of 10. I'll give the championship match a 7 out of 10. It was decent wrestling, but it didn't blow me away. And then we had the women's championship match, the weird women's championship match where Tegan Nox was going up against Io Shirai. These guys had a good match. This was the match of the night by a long way, as far as I'm concerned. Shirai got the win because she's only been champ for like 3 weeks, so it makes sense. But Tegan Nox didn't come away from this match looking weak at all, and it was just good pro wrestling. There wasn't, again, it was what I've sort of been saying about every match, in the sense of it was good. There's nothing that I can really pick apart about it, but there was also nothing that like made me want to desperately get to my mic and tell you guys about this particular episode. I'm glad Io Shirai is still the champion. I think she's got a lot more that she can do. As she was heading back up the ramp, Dakota Kai came out and blasted her with a face wash kick at the top of the stage, and then that was the end of the show. And that, for me, best part of the show. The last like 30 seconds, that isn't something that happens a lot on wrestling shows, AEW or WWE or any of them. Although I watched the final of the New Japan Cup last night as well, and that ends with a bit of a cliffhanger. But I won't spoil it for you in case you haven't watched, you're catching up on your New Japan or anything. But this kind of thing where, like, why... They did do it at the end of the Great American Bash as well, where Karion Kross was there watching the match and wandered off into the darkness, which I thought that was really cool as well. Something that makes you go, ooh, and makes you want to watch next week. You know, a cliffhanger, a fishhook. Like, you know, there's a lot of... AEW do a lot of, like, brawling. You know, it's almost like the amateur, like, high school drama class way of ending everything. It just ends in like a brawl. And I give credit where credit is due. I've been really happy with the way that NXT have sort of finished off things recently and have made you go, oh, cool. Dakota Kai, I'm a big fan of. I've wanted her to be in the title picture for a while. I always felt like Tegan Nox was a bit of a placeholder, even if it was just for a week, or 2 weeks, or whatever it's been. But and she'll get her opportunity. I think the shiny thing needs to be dropped. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, especially if you're a new person coming to the product. It's like, why does she keep calling herself shiny and everything's shiny all the time? It makes no sense. But yeah, Io Shirai gets the win. Dakota Kai announcing herself, kicked her way into the title picture. I really like that as a tagline. That can be something that can be used. And I thought this overall thing was, you know, everything involved in this. I would have given it a 7, but the Dakota Kai ending puts it up to an 8. So even though I said the show was really flat, I think I've given everything an 8, except for the Timothy Thatcher thing, an 8 or a 7. So I suppose this is the quandary that is NXT for me at the moment, is that the storytelling is not bad. Like, it's not mind-blowing, but it's okay. Like, stories are ticking along. There are things happening. Dakota Kai, Io Shirai thing now is an example of that. Like, that's good storytelling. And the wrestling is not bad either. Like, it's good. It's, you know, very good. But it just... I don't know. I'm just flat. I'm just a bit flat. I don't know whether that's a lack of crowd or, you know, the majority of this roster, this new era, you know, the Keith Lee era of NXT is not as well known to myself and to fans. So it's, you know, it's a getting to know you period. But, you know, I mean, no Adam Cole, no Johnny Gargano, no Finn Balor, no Tommaso Ciampa. That's a lot of star power missing. And would suggest that, you know, I mean, that was reflected in the ratings as well, that looked like a lot of people were not necessarily turning over to AEW, but just turning off from NXT. So that's not good for wrestling, full stop, if people aren't watching wrestling. So, yeah, hopefully NXT sort of pick it back up again. I know that they've, you know, utilized a lot of their star power in the last 3 weeks or so, but I just think when you've got those players, play them, you know, like, anyway, we'll see what happens next week. Yeah, so not an overly detailed review of NXT, I'm sorry guys, there just wasn't that much that caught my eye. I didn't really, you know, you can tell by my tone that I'm just like, oh yeah, it was wrestling and I like wrestling. Yeah, so I'm probably going to leave it there. If you like the podcast, tell people about it, rate, review, that gets us in front of the algorithms and, you know, makes us known for some reason. It helps. Whatever, yeah, whatever you do, share, rate, review, you know the drill. It's a podcast. This is what everyone says at the end of the podcast. You can go to WrestleWolf.com. You can, to get the podcast or wrestling news, you can go to our YouTube channel and watch our logo while you listen to the podcast if you want. There will be content there up there soon, I promise. There's a little video from me. You see what I look like, what my lounge room looks like if you want. But anyway, I'll be back next week with Matt for another episode of AEW, and there'll be another NXT review, and I will talk to you guys soon. And until then, please stay safe.